Hello, welcome to our Phelps Scholar Showcase tonight. I'm so thankful that all of you are joining us here this evening. I think we have an exciting event planned for you all to learn a little bit more about a way that you can be involved in the college that you decide to go to for the next 4 years. If hope is that decision, I think there are so many different things that you can actually do here on our campus. And one thing that you can do here on our campus that maybe because I was a part of it while I was a student, I love it so much. So I think that this one thing stands out more than so many other things for me on this campus. Sorry, my name is Pedro Martinez, and I'm going to be your host. I'm one of the admission reps here at Hope College. But I wanted to, again, say, as you are making this decision of things that you can be involved in, right? You need to start thinking about how do I make this decision at the college that I'm going to plan being on. And the Phelps Scholars Program is that program for, I think, everyone. I think everyone should be a part of the Phelps Scholars Program. And I'm so excited that I think we are going to have a great group of people that are going to be joining us here tonight to talk about the Phelps Scholars Program. And they are going to share some insight about their journey through the Phelps Scholars Program. We actually have the director of the Phelps Scholars Program joining us here tonight. So why don't we go ahead and welcome our first guest, Casey Stevens, who is the director of the Phelps Scholars Program. Welcome, Casey. How you doing?
Doing all right. Good to be with you. Thanks for having us here tonight, Pedro.
Oh, well, we're so glad to have you, Casey. I think this is going to be a whole lot of fun. So
Yeah,
I hope you are ready to answer some good questions.
I'm here. Looking
Uh,
forward to it.
well, awesome, Casey. I think one of the cool things is I think everyone needs to get to know Casey Stevens. Who is Casey Stevens? The director of the Phelps Scholars Program, right? So I think there's a little bit more to that. Casey, if you don't mind, we would love to hear a little bit more about what actually brought you to Hope College.
Yeah, so I'll give the brief version is my undergraduate experience as a student when I going through was just completely transformative. And for me, it was um, just so shifting for me and so formational that I knew I wanted to have a part in creating and shaping those types of experiences for other students on a campus. And so I began working with college students almost as soon as after I graduated. And I got to a point where I was working in my career and I knew that I wanted to be at a place that was taking steps and doing really creative and fun things in meaningful ways to shape what students are experiencing on campus. And specifically, when I look at Phelps scholars in ways that are preparing them for next steps, right? So when I was kind of finding this opportunity at Hope, I was looking at a college that demonstrated to me that it was committing itself to um, diversity and equity and inclusion. I was looking for a college that was taking steps in that direction, even in the midst of imperfection. I was looking for the opportunity to work with a really dynamic and engaging group of students, and I'm biased. But I would argue with anybody that the Phelps Scholars are the most dynamic and engaging bright group of students on Hope's campus. And so when that came about, along with the colleagues who I met throughout the interview process, that was just a really great opportunity for me to know that I was going to be at a place and with people who were doing just really important work with students and doing fun work with students as well.
Wow, that is great. And you know what, Casey, you're not alone. I think I'm biased too. I'm not gonna lie.
Yes.
So I think it's again, right? Phelps Scholars Program is a phenomenal program here, and I said that a little bit earlier. But I think right, we get this opportunity to build into a little bit more of talking about what the Phelps Scholar Program actually is. And so for our next question, we
Yeah.
would love to hear a little bit more in your own words.
Yeah.
What is the Phelps Scholars Program? And who are the Phelps Scholars?
Yeah. So Phelps Scholars, I describe Phelps Scholars as a multicultural, multiracial, multinational living learning community. So students who are coming from all over the world, all over the country, from different backgrounds and experiences, and they're bringing that to the table. And it's a place where one of our mottos that I've kind of been holding on to across the last year is a place where difference doesn't have to mean division. So an alternative vision for community where difference doesn't have to mean division, and where we can celebrate our differences and be curious in the midst of our learning and our growing, especially in today, this moment that we're in where there's kind of a little bit of a crisis around some of these things, right? So what does it look like to have the skills and the strengths to navigate the way that we are created meaningfully with difference, and to celebrate that, but also to navigate some of the tensions and complexities around those things. So that's kind of like the overarching view. And then to kind of bring it in, what does that look like in practicality? Well, we have 80 to 100 students every year who come to Hope from across the country, from across the world, and they're living together in the same residence hall. They're taking a couple of classes together. They're doing some service learning in the city of Holland, so that when you leave this place that's been your home after 4 years, you know some of the strengths of your community. And then within that, we're also we're going on some trips. We're getting off campus. And so typically we're able to, one of my favorite trips every year is we go to the Islamic Center of America. And we in our first class, we read a book about somebody who's been kind of on this journey of their own faith experience. And then we visit this mosque, and even for our students who identify as Christian at a college like Hope, they're able to go there and to say, all right, this is different than what I believe, but man, I just learned something about about reverence and creativity and about prayer, right? And so we're able to go to places like that and kind of enjoy that as a community and learn from people with those people. And then we like to have a little bit of fun with that too. So after all these trips, we're definitely finishing them off with food. Um, Other things that come to mind is we want people to have a sense of belonging, right, and a sense of
Mm, mm,
place. And so knowing that that looks a little bit different for everyone, one of my things that I look forward to is when we, hopefully this coming fall, we're able to get back to it, is we have a welcome back cookout. We go over to the beach at Lake Michigan and we cook out for anybody on campus who's ever been a Phelps Scholar, which is over 300 students. It's about 10% of our student body. We're one of the largest cohorts of students at Hope. And so all these seniors and juniors and sophomores are coming back to kind of reunite with each other and also to welcome our freshmen on campus. So I would describe us as a community. I would describe us as a community of learners. I would describe us as a community of learners who have a rich network of support on campus. So really close advising. I just sat with a student for an hour today over coffee, talking about what her transition to Hope has been like since she moved here from Rwanda, right? And just kind of processing through some of those things.
mm.
So yeah, that's kind of a little bit of a summary of how I would outline it.
Well, two things as I hear that, right? Well, first and foremost, amazing. One thing I hear is staff invited to the cookout, like, that we're Phelps Scholars, because I'd like to come to that.
Yeah,
And I think, oh my gosh, the food piece, right? Like you said, that you always end it off with some food. I remember being a part of the Phelps Scholars program, and we had abuelitas chocolate one night and some pan dulce, and that just meant the world to me
yeah,
as a Latino student, Mexican student, being a part of something like that, where I was like, yeah, this I know well, and I get to share this with my friends and
yeah.
other Phelps Scholars. So I think that's really cool.
That has been one of the coolest pieces, has been students being able to have a part of themselves celebrated in the midst of our learning and in the midst of just what we're doing, right? So another one of our trips is we go to um, well, I might get this wrong, but Trinity United Church of Christ in Chicago, which is on the south side of Chicago, which is a historically African American church embedded in the south side. And then we follow that up with some soul food, right? So
Mm.
to sit around the table, and I remember actually, I think I may have been sitting at the table with Andre after this and just talking to people like, what does your family eat at Thanksgiving? Because this looks like my Thanksgiving, right? And just kind of talking about some of those things, and just, yeah, those are the places where it's really cool to see students
That's where
find
the
that sense of
magic
belonging.
happens, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That's where the magic happens. I love that. Well, Casey, last question that I wanted to ask quickly. What role is the Phelps Scholars Program playing to make Hope a more inclusive community?
Yeah. Um, I think about this on, I'll say maybe a couple of different fronts. So one is, I was doing an interview with a student last week who was writing an article for our campus newspaper, and they asked me how Hope, or how Phelps Scholars is helping to create allies. And I think one of the things that we do when we think about inclusion in Phelps Scholars is what I said earlier, where people get to be curious, people get to be courageous. They also build trust with one another and rapport with one another, so that they're able to have these complex and difficult conversations to move past the discomfort. Phelps College is going to make you uncomfortable.
Hmm.
It will be challenging for you, right? Like I've not met a student who's gone through who hasn't faced some sort of challenge. But growth doesn't happen without challenge, right? And so you're going to be supported in the midst of that. And we're going to walk alongside you as faculty and staff. Y'all are going to walk alongside of each other as a community. But first and foremost, we're cultivating this space where people can embody what it means to do that well. And I think when we do that, then we're able to also go out and we're able to model that, right? So we're a first year living learning community. So one of the other things that I see then is students who go out from Phelps Scholars and do things. So a couple of stats that I came across in the last couple of years are our multicultural student organizations, our MSOs at Hope, that really are kind of places for a lot of our students of color and their student organizations, as well as folks who identify as allies. 85 over, I think it's over 85% of their executive board leadership are former Phelps scholars,
Wow.
right?
Wow.
And even though we're 10 to 12% of Hope student body, and about 6% of the students who live on campus with our 3-year residency requirement, we're about 6% of students who live on campus.
Mhm.
We're every year almost a quarter of resident assistants, right? So really overrepresented in leadership. Our students are represented in like almost every major in almost every student organization. So when I think about inclusion, I think about people who are inclusive accountants and people who are inclusive engineers and people who are inclusive teachers and people who are inclusive presidents of the International Justice Mission, people who are
Mm.
inclusive e-board leaders of Vox Populi, right? So that's one of the ways that I see that happen. Another thing, and this is maybe what I'll wrap up with, is part of our focus with students is for you, we want you to feel supported. We want you to explore these things so that you're prepared to live and thrive in a global society once you're a graduate of Hope. But we also want you to be skilled and gifted at asking yourself hard questions and of learning a little bit more about yourself. And I think what goes along with that then is discovering the unique ways that you are talented and gifted and skilled with agency. And so what can you do? And I think that's something in Phelps Scholars that hopefully when students are kind of transitioning out of their first year, and I'll say once a Phelps Scholar, always a Phelps Scholar. So we are like Pedro, Phelps Scholar, right, as an alumni, but always just students knowing that they can come back, but also hopefully that they are cultivating a sense of who they are and what they can do and what it means to meaningfully take steps in that direction.
Mm, I love that. I love that. And I think something that, again, right, that you brought up in that conversation is that having people to walk alongside of you as you are going through this search for identity. I think about you and I think about you, some of the other members that are part of the team for the Pub Scholars program. Looked like you had something you wanted to say.
Yeah, thank you. And that's something else that I'll just really I'll echo that completely, right? So
Hmm.
part of the way that Phelps Scholars is also making Hope a more inclusive place is anybody who's a Phelps Scholar is going to know that they have a team of advocates, right? And
Mm.
so um, I think, you know, you asked what brought me to Hope. I wanted to be at an institution that was demonstrating a certain direction of commitment in terms of caring about issues related to diversity. And I think I found that. But we're not perfect, right? And we're growing in some really important ways. And I think that's important to point out. Um, and as people encounter some of those imperfections, I think it's really important that they develop their own voice, but they also know that there are voices who will support them and go to bat for them. And so, um, so yeah, just knowing that you have myself, that you have our program coordinator, Michael Brown, that you have your resident director who will be in the hall, that Pedro not just had. Michael Brown is like somebody that
I just have to
everybody
give
at
a
Hope
shout
College
out to
needs to
Michael
know.
Brown. I mean,
Yeah.
he still reaches out, and for those of you that are considering applying to the Pub Scholars program, he loves to play noon ball, which is basketball at noon. Go out
Yes.
and play with them. Doesn't matter what skill level you are. That's how you get to know them better. So I got to give him
Well,
a shout out, Casey.
yeah, absolutely. He'll also give you a hard time in some ping pong. So
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
yeah.
Always pushing you to be better though. That's what he does. So, well, wonderful, Casey. I think that's been super helpful, and thanks for sharing that. I think the next piece to our wonderful night is we get to introduce some students. So I would love it if you wouldn't mind. I know you invited some students to join us tonight, introducing these students, these wonderful students.
Yeah, so who we have here with us tonight is Duncan Lamb, who is a first year Phelps Scholar. We also have Andrea Hernandez and Marvelous Oguduru, who might correct me on pronouncing his last name, but I think I've gotten it all right, all here with us. So I'll let these folks introduce themselves a little bit more, but definitely 3 folks if you end up at Hope that you'll want to get to know. And Duncan, I'll say, will be an RA in Scott Hall with Phelps Scholars, so you'll certainly have the chance to get to know him.
Wonderful, Duncan. Love hearing that.
Hi. Well, my name is Duncan Lamb. I'm a freshman here at Hope. I was actually born and raised in Holland, Michigan, so I've been my home my whole life. And I am currently declared as a studio art major. funny enough, if you had asked me like growing up, I never really saw myself actually attending Hope College, whether that was just through wanting to be like contrary to my family or whatnot. But through meeting people like Phelps Scholars or people like Pedro or Casey, it like never fails to remind me that this was the best decision I could have made.
I can go next. Hi, guys. My name is Marvelous. I am a sophomore and I'm double majoring in philosophy and political science. I'm also an international student from Nigeria. So on campus, I'm involved with like the campus ministry student leadership team, the admissions office as a tour guide, and also the president of Hope's Philosophy Club. So a bunch of things here and there.
Hi, my name is Andrea Hernandez. I am a sophomore here. I was in the Phelps Scholars program last year, and I am a social work major, just declared this semester. And I'm not as involved as everyone else, but my roommate's part of the LSO, so I can speak a little on that. And it's a Latino student organization here on campus. And I'm also gonna be a summer bridge director assistant next semester. So yeah.
So awesome. And if something, those of you that are watching haven't noticed, there are like tons of acronyms for everything here on our campus: LSO, Latino Student Organization. We we could save that for another day, but yeah, there are tons of ways to get involved. It's so cool to hear all the different things that you all are doing on our campus. And also as just a person here on campus who's had an opportunity to watch you all grow, it's so amazing to see and hear some of the things that you are all doing. But we have a couple questions for all of you tonight. So I hope that you are also ready to answer some questions. So first off, I want to ask a question to the group. Tell us a little bit more about how you heard about the Phelps Scholars Program and why you decided to apply or participate.
I can go. For me, I actually heard about it through my father, because he was really active in a fraternity that used to be here called the Knickerbockers. And his favorite people in there, a lot of the new ones anyway, were always part of the Phelps Scholars Program. And so he really encouraged me to check it out. And I was always hesitant, because it's like your dad is telling you to do something. So why would you want to do that? But I got to read more into it. I watched all the videos that was available. And it seemed like a really good program to get into. It seemed like a really good way to like expand, I guess, my cultural view of the world and just get to know more people, especially in like areas like Holland, where it still needs to be more diverse as it is now. But it's a great way, I think, to learn about different cultures and bring that together. And like asked my friend who we kind of went in going like knowing we're gonna be roommates. We both agreed that was a good idea, and now here we are.
I'm not quite sure how I heard about it. It might have been from my admissions rep, Barbara Miller, but I think she, either her or just like through emails from the program, not sure exactly. But I do know that I like signed up for it immediately. Like I like read the course description and it was like I didn't have any reason why I wouldn't do it. Just kind of one of those things where you're like, yeah, you find it and you just feel like it's a good fit. Yeah, that's kind of how I found out about the program. And it's been amazing. It's been everything I wanted it to be and more.
For me, I kind of signed up accidentally. I was meaning to sign up for the summer bridge program, and then because like people were contacting me to sign up for both, I was just like, sure, why not? Sure, why not? And so and it wasn't until like I got my housing that I realized I was in the program. But it was a really good accidental thing that happened to me. So I'm really thankful that I did say yes to everything that everyone's calling me for. But yeah, that's mainly how I heard about the Phelps Scholars program.
Andrew, it sounds like it was the best accident you ever made, huh?
For sure, top 10, top 10.
We love hearing that.
What are some of what is or was, for those of you who are sophomores, your favorite part of being a Phelps Scholar?
I think for me, it's just honestly like the community of friends that we were able to have. It's nice to like, I remember even up till now, like being able to walk into the dining hall and see people and be able to like have a table, especially when you're like a freshman and like don't like really know anyone on campus, it's nice to like be like, oh, like I've caught a glimpse of this face in my dorm before, or like I've seen this person in class. So they're slightly more approachable than just any random stranger. And just having like really cool conversations. I know several times I have gone to class sleep deprived because there have just been so many really cool conversations that take place in the basement, and just learning about people's different experiences that will go up until like 2, 3 a.m. And yeah, especially as someone who's like an international student and like experiencing like such like culture shock and all different kinds of things, it's just nice to be able to have a community to experience that with, people to who can recognize my struggle, and I can also work to recognize their struggles. It's really nice.
Marvelous. I was just real quick. I heard you make meals for some of your friends, and yet I haven't been invited.
You know, it is very I will invite you when COVID restrictions are over. Yes. Whenever Casey allows me to.
I will say I was worried about Marvelous when I saw him bring all that food back to the program last year, but from everybody I heard from, he definitely threw down. So well done, Marvelous.
Wonderful.
I guess also for me, it definitely is the community. I feel like it's just a great way to get like to know people, especially coming in as a freshman. Like Marvelous said, like it's just a pretty welcoming group, right? So people like from all different walks of life all like come together and live together. You get to learn. You also, it's just such like an educational experience, and like I guess an educational sense, but not with a class sense necessarily. And it's just like always cool how you can just go down and there's someone in the lounge and you're always going to know at least face value. And it's always okay to just say hello. Even just walking across campus, you know, if you had a bad day, someone's always going to say, hello, how you doing? And just like to have that always be there is really cool. I think really necessary, especially as an incoming freshman.
I guess I'll just piggyback on everyone, but for me, it's also the community. I really love it. I'm able to be lucky to stay in Scott for my second year as well. So seeing how even COVID couldn't stop us from building a bond and having that community and having those conversations with people. Of course, there are restrictions where we can't go in people's cohorts, or like we have to wear masks still, but we still do that safely and still have that same community and are still able to bond with each other, say hi everywhere, go out for dinner together, eat outside together. Like it's just so amazing how like not even that can stop us from building such a like strong and unique bond with each other.
I really love hearing that. I think something that I always think about, it's hard to leave, right, Scott Hall, after freshman year, and it's because you spend so much time developing this family together. And that's really what it becomes, right? It feels like a family. So great to hear that from all of you guys, and just speaking on the community aspect of the Phelps Scholars program. Duncan, just quick question for you as a freshman. How has the Phelps Scholars program helped you acclimate to a life here at Hope?
I guess it it's like right off the bat when I first got here, I was a lot more social than I ever was in high school. I mean, I always knew people in high school. I never hung out with anyone, but when I got here, I started just like talking to everyone. I don't know, I was always out and about. It was just nice. It was just nice to have a little like safety net, you know, because my social I guess timer is very apparent. But it's nice to when I need to be around people that it's always really easy to be there. And yeah, it was really good first semester to really just have that, especially right before you really get to know everyone through your classes or meet people through like random events you do, like whether it's like spike ball, which I know a lot of people meet people through spike ball. So if you want to do that ever, do that. But it was just good just to always have that like right as you get there. You know, you don't have to go looking for people. Like they'll just come to you and you'll be there no matter what.
I love that. And Duncan, I have to, just because I have some more background than everyone else, because I got to recruit Duncan. I don't know if I believe him when he says he wasn't that social in high school. I feel like you had to be a social guy in high school, Duncan. So
I mean, yeah, but I didn't like hang out with people. That's the thing. I hung out with like two guys, especially like my friend Andy, my friend Sebastian. But I don't know.
Oh.
I was like in school, like related events, I'd always be around people, but at home, it's like no one.
Well, thank you, Duncan. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Marvelous. As an international student, could you tell us a little bit more about how the Phelps Scholars Program has helped you in your transition to the U.S.?
Hmm. Yeah, that's a great question. So I came to the US at 17, hopped on a plane to a country that neither myself or my parents had ever been to. And sometimes I question how they would let a minor do that, but hey, it worked out well. And I think like, honestly, I don't think I would be like as adjusted to the climate and environment of the US with regards to academics and social life and just community without the Phelps Scholars Program. Hope is great in and of itself, but I think there's also something to say about the small pockets of community that you can find within that. And definitely the Phelps Scholars Program has been that for me and for a lot of the sophomores that like were in my cohort, and even currently I'm a mentor to this year's Phelps Scholars, and I can also see like Hope is like a really great place to go to school and do community, but like within the Phelps Scholars Program, there's just something about it, about being able to engage with people and ask these hard questions that just allows transition to be somewhat easier. And especially for international individuals like myself who for the first time in my 17 18 years of life are like asking questions of like, what does it mean to be Black when you haven't grown up with that concept all of your life? What does it mean to be a person of color in the US? And processing through some of the really hard events that America and the world were going through, like over the pandemic and prior to that, having a community of people who are open to questions, who are um, open to also using their experiences as launching boards for like their realizations about like race and society has just been phenomenal. So yeah.
Sorry, y'all, I got to move some things around on my screen. Um, Andrea, I was wondering, I'm sorry, Andrea, uh, I will just take this moment to say, doing Zoom sometimes gets complicated. Thank you for your patience in this moment. Andrea, looking back on your Phelps Scholars experience, what's one thing that you learned that you weren't expecting to learn?
Obviously, going into it, I knew that I wanted to learn about other cultures and about other people and how they grew up and stuff. So I did expect that, but what I didn't expect to learn is how to cook food from other cultures and like how like it tastes or how it is. I remember I forgot the name, but Marvelous would make these like dough balls that were so good, but I was allergic to them, but I still ate them. I still ate them because they were so good. And he kept telling me like, stop eating them. And I was like, no, it's not stopping me. So I really wasn't expecting to learn how to cook food from other cultures. And I always cooked at home, and I was cooked in the basement as well here in Scott. And I was willing to give it to other people, but I didn't expect other people to be willing to teach me how to cook food from their culture. So that was one thing that really shocked me, but I'm really grateful for.
So we have a Q&A feature on the bottom of your screen. You should be able to see. And if anybody has questions, we'd love to hear those from you. And one person has submitted a question that I want to pose to our students. And um, there's definitely, kind of, this person asked, there's definitely this language around diversity and inclusion and being an ally. In particular, what part of being a Phelps Scholar has helped you or your peers make that actionable, right? Like that has taken this from more than just ideas to ways that you can impact other communities on campus. And I think inherent in that question is, how is Phelps Scholars at Hope more than just Phelps Scholars? How are ways that you've seen people branch out to other communities and take what we've learned and make it actionable, or yourselves as well?
Oh, Andrea, you can go. That's a great question. I mean, like, I, 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 I think that's honestly one of the central questions that we as Phelps scholars kind of like grapple with. It's like the learning we do within our community. How are we making sure that it's also like influencing people outside of that? Maybe people who would also be like less receptive to some of the discussions that we're having. And it's definitely a question that we're still working on answering. And I won't say that we figured out all the aspects of it, but I imagine that like the fact that like I think we can think of it as like it like a tree. Like the Phelps scholars are kind of like the root of it, and since it's like a freshman year program, these are freshmen coming in from different parts of the country and different parts of the world, and being able to live together and have these conversations. But what happens after that? It's people like Duncan who come back to be RAs, but we also have my people in the sophomore year who are now like working at admissions on campus, working in the dining hall, having conversations in the sociology department, having conversations in the chemistry department, being part of different clubs and organizations. So in as much as the Phelps Scholar program is a community in and of itself, the members of that community are in places where they are able to, at some level, share their experiences. And I think honestly, like that is one of the things that I've come to appreciate. It's for me, it's being able to reflect on the experiences shared by Latinx people of color when I'm having conversations in philosophy club. It's being able to reflect on what does it mean to be a Christian as a Black person when I'm having conversations in campus ministry. So those experiences are still rooted in the Phelps Scholars Program, but we are definitely at the same time pushing into those other communities for sure.
I almost feel like we shouldn't add more because Marvelous does such a perfect job of explaining it. But yeah, just one thing I did want to add on to it. It's just like how he was saying, we're like a small part, and as soon as we leave Scott, like it's more like we start branching out and we start spreading across campus. And most of us, we join organizations here on campus. And from there, we voice our opinions and we voice our perspective and voice the perspectives of others who have we have learned through through the Phelps Scholars Program. That way they feel heard as well and they feel seen here on campus. And from there, we try to work with faculty members and other people on campus to try to make this place more inclusive. We try to build more events so that people can start coming out, learning about our culture, learning about other people's culture. And yeah, that's for the most part a lot of things that I've seen that a lot of Phelps scholars have been contributing to our campus overall.
And part of my approach as director, when I think about the types of experiences that students are going to have, is you all are part of a larger collective, but within that collective, you're individuals, right? So Marvelous came here and casually said, yeah, I'm coming from philosophy club meeting. Marvelous didn't come here and say that he was presiding over philosophy club meeting, right? So Marvelous is somebody who has, right, like who embodies a certain quality where I wasn't shocked to hear that he's president of a club on campus. And the energy that he brings to the table in that way is someone who takes a certain element of knowing who he is and that agency and is ready and willing and able to exercise that agency in that corner of campus in that way. And so that I use that as an example. I also see students who I know are a little bit quieter and who I know are a little bit shyer. And yet I think of somebody in particular who's treasurer of one of our student organizations on campus. And one of the ways that they're doing that is just kind of exercising their voice in that space. And so I think my larger point here is just to say that we want to work with students as you are in respect of who you are and help you identify ways of going about. And so one of my favorite things is when Phelps scholars go and they live in a new place, and then I meet a sophomore or a junior who says, oh yeah, I lived on the same floor as so-and-so. And one of my biggest regrets at Hope is that I didn't do Phelps scholars, right? So my gratitude isn't in their regret, but my gratitude is in the way that their life was transformed by somebody who was a part of their new community. On the other hand, there are also people who are leading worship in chapel and who are speaking in different places and presiding over organizations. And I think of one of our students who led a march on campus this fall. None of us who worked at the college, faculty, staff, other employees knew that this march was happening because the students said, we are leading a march and it is going to be our voice. And they felt empowered and they were equipped with the tools to organize that. And so that's another example, right, of a student who was a Phelps Scholar alumni who did that and is now a senior and getting ready to graduate. But that's a gift that they were able to cultivate. So I think in response to that question is it also comes down to the individual some, and we want to support you where you are. And the other side of that I just want to say briefly is in that individuality, we're also going to respect what you might need in different seasons, right? And so it's not our expectation that every Phelps Scholar is going to be the leading the front of the charge change agent on campus. Some of you might just need to take care of yourselves. Some of you might just need to focus on grades for a semester. And I also just want to echo, as much as we care about students being involved in cultivating and shaping the type of experience that they want on campus, there's also a time and a place for that, right? So I want you to hear agency to both maintain your priorities, but to also shape your community in a way that you want.
Really, really like that, Casey. And thank you everyone for answering that question. We have a couple other questions in the chat box. Here's one that I think will be fun for everyone to answer, but how difficult is it to get into the Phelps Scholars Program?
I would say it's not that difficult. Like if you seem interested and you just apply, I'm pretty sure like 100% you'll get in. It's just like if you're like, oh no, I just want to go into Scott and bash the place. Like I'm pretty sure that's gonna be a reason why you won't get in. But if you seem like interested and you just want to apply, I say go for it because you'll most likely get in. Like not even most likely, you will 100% get in. But I mean, there are like slots in there, so you do want to live in Scott for the most part, and so I would say the sooner the better.
I can describe the application process a little bit too. So part of my idea around the Phelps Scholars application, and this is coming from other folks who also were a part of this, is I don't want you all have been applying to a lot of things in a lot of places, and I don't want you to approach this with application fatigue, okay? So I think there's 3, maybe 4 questions as I try to recall exactly. And we're looking for you to write 4, thank you. We're looking for you to write 3 to 5 sentences in response to that, to each of those questions, okay? So think of just like a short paper in total, and 3 to 5 sentences in response to that. And our goal is we want to know you if you're going to be a Phelps Scholar, and this is a chance to get to know you. That's the first time that we're going to be introduced to who you are in a lot of cases. B is I want you to have a sense as you cast your vision for what experiences you want in college. We want you to have a sense if something like Phelps Scholars would be a part of what you're looking for. And hopefully our questions would help you get at some of that. And then the third piece of that is just like Andrea said, we want to look at this and also to make sure that we're congruent, right? And if a student applies to Phelps Scholars and if your ideas are congruent with ours, then we're excited to have you be a part of the program. So I would not describe the application process as strenuous. And then the last thing, and Andrea got at this as well, is if we had a deadline, it would be May 31st. We're never going to tell somebody not to apply. But we really want students to apply sooner than later. And there's a couple of reasons for that. First, we want you to be able to live in Scott Hall. And sometimes, just like this year, Scott Hall fills up, and and students cultivate communities in a nearby hall, but we really want you to be able to live in Scott, in the residence hall where all the students live. And then we also, that's actually the primary reason. And we want you to be able to make a decision too.
Great. That's very helpful. Another big question on here, with being in the Phelps Scholars, are all the service opportunities and volunteering within walking distance or public transportation or car required? I think we can answer this kind of a 2-part question. You can answer the question and then just maybe talk a little bit quickly about some of those experiences that you participated in.
we'll shoot this to Marvelous and Andrea because Duncan did not have a service opportunity this year.
That's why he's smiling down there.
Mine was within walking distance, and I think most of the people that I had conversations with were within walking distance. I also know that typically on campus, a good number of people have cars, and what happened in my group, it was like maybe 4 or 5 of us ended up volunteering at a particular organization, and I think one person had a car, so that person would just kind of like drive us there, which is typically what happens if it's like maybe too far of a walk. But if you visited campus in person, which if you haven't, you should definitely, you will know that Hope College is really small and like not like really like tight knit, and a lot of things are like together. So most things aren't super far. Everything's pretty accessible here. So by walking or at the most a bike, but you'll be able to figure it out.
So for me, depends on what you call walking distance. Um, so my placement was like a 10-minute drive, but it turned like into a 30-minute walk. I wish I would have known that we like campus safety here does provide transportation to your placements. So you just have to call like in advance and ask them for um a ride, but I didn't know that. So I would walk all the time to my placement, but it was still fun. I liked it, honestly. It was a good walk on, you got to see like a lot of Holland's nature. So I did enjoy that for the most part. And but yeah, like Marvelous said, most of the times a lot of people group together and go to the same placement. I know my roommate last year, a lot of them went to Holland Hospital, and about 2 of them had cars, so they would carpool all together and just go there together at the same time. And yeah, if like you communicate with other people, you can make something work out of it.
So a few points from the administrative end. We have all of our placements are within 1 mile of campus because we want to make it a walkable experience for students if they don't have a car. So if you do have a service placement, it will be within 1 mile of campus. The other is our program coordinator, the amazing Michael Brown, who I mentioned earlier, has been cultivating relationships with all of the volunteer coordinators at these sites for years and years. And so part of our work, part of his work, is making sure that this is a meaningful experience for you, right? So earlier I said, we want you to be cultivating an understanding of what does it mean to be a member of the Holland community in addition to the Hope community. And so he's been working on that and is really committed to that and has developed some really meaningful relationships in that space. And then, as Andrea said, somebody mentioned the folks volunteering at Holland Hospital. You also there's a service fair that we have at the beginning of the fall, where students are able to kind of rank where they would like to go. And most students end up with their first, if not their second place placement on there. And in particular at the hospital, I don't know if we'll be able to do that this year, but in the past, one of the things that we've done is we reserve those placements in particular first for pre-med students, and then if we can, nursing students as well. And the hospital gives out a total number of placements each year, and Phelps Scholars actually get about a quarter of those. So we're able to reserve some really strong opportunities for some of our health sciences students from the start. So real quickly, somebody asked about just a couple of logistical questions. And they asked about Scott Hall capacity is the first one. Or I guess that's the one logistical. Then I actually have a question for Andrea about Bridge. The Scott Hall capacity is right around 90 students. And then sometimes, depending on RAs and RA roommate situations, that number fluctuates between 85 and about 90 students. So, Andrea, somebody asked about Summer Bridge. Would you mind explaining what the Summer Bridge program is in just a couple of minutes?
Yeah, of course. So just off the bat, 10 out of 10 recommend doing this and the Phelps Scholars program. But yeah, the Summer Bridge program is a 2-week program. So you arrive early on campus. So it's pretty nice because it's pretty empty and you have all the campus to yourself. You get to know the building. So whenever like the first day of school comes around, you don't look lost and you don't look like it doesn't look like if you're a freshman. So then yeah, so you come here 2 weeks early. You take two classes and you get credit for them, and you take them in those 2 weeks. And what I like to say is that you get an academic and a social life in 2 weeks, like of what hope is going to be like. And it's really fast paced. Well, not really. It's not. It goes by really fast, but you really enjoy it. They take you on trips. They take you to the sand dunes, to the beach. You get to learn about other people. You get to meet new people who are in the same boat as you, who are here for the first time, very anxious, very nervous, wanting to meet friends. And yeah, so you get to do that all together with people. Um, so yeah, that's what the summer bridge program is. And if you apply, you'll see me there, and I'll be helping y'all out with it.
That's so awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I want to answer two more big questions for our guest here tonight. And here's a big one that I think that I'm guessing Casey, Marvelous, and Andrea can probably weigh in a little bit more so on this, because this speaks to after freshman year. Does the responsibility of representing your culture, ethnicity, and perspective throughout the school after the Phelps Scholars program ever weigh on you, especially considering that there isn't much diversity within the school?
I don't, please go ahead, Andrea.
So yeah, I would say it has, if I'm gonna be completely honest, it has taken a toll on me. Just because there is a lot because my roommate is part of the Latino student organization. I do go to her meetings sometimes, and I do like just to like accompany her. And there is so much that as a community they want to do and they want to bring to our campus. But because of some COVID restrictions, obviously we can't do much. There's like so many limitations that we have. And yeah, just trying to teach other people. Some people aren't really willing to hear you out. But for the most part, everyone is. And just finding the right crowd and finding the right moment and time to sit down with somebody and speak about your culture, and having, that conversation can really take a toll on you, because for me at least, I felt like I really did want to make an impact as a Latina here on campus. And I did want to leave my mark. So that's just me personally, like, what I want to do before I graduate. And it did take a toll on me, but I've learned to incorporate that through the actions that I have in my academics and how I am involved on campus.
Um, yeah, I think I'm at a similar place with Andrea, where it's like it can be hard, especially just because there are so many, like so few of us on campus. But I think kind of connects to what Casey said about there will be members of the Phelps Scholars community who are out there pushing up against um, other communities at Hope, and then there will also be those individuals who are somewhat more reserved. But in that, I think if there's like the constellation, at least for me, in that has been with you can always, even though we have our struggles and ask people who are generally open to engaging with others and as people of color, like we can always find like some form of community and solidarity in the Phelps Scholars Program. And it's kind of like that base and foundation that we were talking about earlier, where it's like ultimately like you're found, like it's what holds you up. And like there are times when you just have to come back into that closer circle, like because we're all human. And there are times, and hopefully the Phelps Scholars Program, ideally that's what we're working to do, where we're preparing you to go out into the larger community and in country context and a more global context, but we're also making sure that you have a space to come back to at the end of a long day, when some people are being brutal with their words or stuff like that. And for the most part, it has been that place where I can always come back and be like, yeah, class wasn't so fun today because we talked about X, Y, Z, and I can feel somewhat of some peace and consolation.
And I think Marvelous, I think you said this really well. Part of the creation of Phelps Scholars was a desire for our students of color who were interested in having a community to have a created space that was committed to representation, and to have a created space that was committed to there being a community who valued and honored those experiences. And so I think part of, if I were talking to a younger cousin about choosing a college, and if this cousin was a person of color, I would in particularly acknowledge that most colleges are predominantly white institutions. And in your process of selecting one of those places, if that's a place you end up, it'll be really, really important for you to identify sources of community when that place is imperfect, where you can know and anticipate a sense of home and a sense of belonging. And so I think some of the things that were mentioned, I just want to clarify, I don't think those challenges are because of Phelps Scholars. And I just want to clarify, anytime I speak with a student, and part of my work, part of my goal, and our goal as a team in Phelps Scholars is for all of our students to know and respect the type of agency that they want to have. And so when I hear a student say it's my responsibility to educate, I clarify, right? And I did it today with a student. I said, there's a campus full of educators here. You are at a college, right? It is not your job to educate, right? It's your job to be a collaborator and a partner in everybody's learning, because we share that responsibility here. But it is not your job to make sure that other people learn how to be right and decent if they're being wrong and indecent. You have a campus full of educators here who can be committed to that. Okay, so I just want to, that's my approach to this. And I think yeah, and I'll just say that with full honor and respect to Andrea Marvelous's responses. I think that those are probably pretty consistent in some ways, that some days are really hard, some days are really good. Many days I think are probably really good, but hey, if we're being real, some days are hard. And what does it mean to have a place, right? When I ask students what their community is, I like to say, if you want to celebrate with somebody, do you have 2, 3, 4, 5 people that I want to be like, this is why I got an A on my exam today? And if you just had a really hard day, do you have 2, 3, 4, 5 people that you can come back and say, this was really hard, I need to talk about this? And I think that's something that people find with Phelps Scholars.
Really love that, Casey. I think the whole piece, and Marvelous and Andrea, you guys' answers. But yeah, having those people, that community, right, I think really makes that difference. We are running short on time, so I just real quickly before the panelists leave, in maybe 1 or 2 sentences, what are some big takeaways or exciting things that you can share that would, for our guests listening tonight, just takeaways about the Phelps Scholars Program? It's hard to put it in 2 sentences. I know there's so much.
Yeah, I was about to say that. I would say for the most part, be open to learn, be open to listen, and be open to express yourself as well. A lot of people are they like to keep things within themselves, but it's nice to be able to have somebody that you can talk to and, have them hear you out. So
Love that.
that's a big takeaway for me.
Love that.
For me, I think it was just more so. So the Phelps Scholars Program is a living learning program, and I think this is not going to be 2 sentences, but in as much as I love the learning and academic part, and reading books and all of that stuff, I think it was really the living part that I appreciated a lot. It was I think my biggest takeaway was being able to experience people who are different, and coming from different backgrounds, but then ultimately be connected by like the most random things, like walking into the bathroom and being like at 1 a.m. and they're like, yeah, I just finished my paper that I procrastinated on. And we're like all brushing our teeth and getting ready for bed, or people being downstairs at 3 watching like random TV shows that we all grew up on, even though we're from like different parts of the world. So I think my biggest takeaway was just like the humanity that is like in all of us. Like it's a weird thing to say, but just to have that like re-acknowledged through the program that brings so many people from different parts of the country and world and from so many different backgrounds. So definitely
Thank you,
that.
Marvelous. We appreciate all your sentences. They were all great sentences.
I think a big takeaway for me was obviously, I mean, at least for me, and for a lot of people going to college, like this is their first time like living on their own. And like a lot like what Marvelous said is like you learn, like you meet people from all different walks of life, and you find those similarities and you like embrace them, because and also the differences though in the same, it's just as important. But through that, like you can like create a connection, and that'll always be there. You can always go back to that, and they'll always be there for you. And it's like, yeah, it's a whole family, and like, yeah, I see people. I'm sure next year I'll see people. Always talk to them. Always stop. Make sure they're doing okay. It's a community. It's really important, I think, for us and also for Hope College in the world. I think we need more communities like this.
Love that, Duncan. And I 100% believe that you'll check up on everybody next year. I believe that with all my heart. Well, I want to thank you, Duncan, Marvelous, and Andrea for joining us tonight and answering some of our questions. I think this has been very helpful for our group. So again, thank you. And I hope you have a great rest of your night. But Casey, before you log off, I know you spoke to this a little bit earlier, but quickly, if you could just maybe a call to action, just share with our students again, how do they apply? And what does that process look like?
Yeah, so I just put a link in the chat to our website, hope.edu/Phelps. And right at the top of that page, I think on the right-hand side is a link to our application. So if you're interested, right, if you want to learn a little bit more about Phelps Scholars, definitely you can email us at phelpsscholar@hope.edu, but you can also apply and you can ask any questions that you have in your application as well. So that's a great next step. Talk to your admissions counselor too, right? So you've got folks who are really informed about all things Hope College, right? And so go ahead and ask them your curious questions. If you think we might be a little bit biased because we're in the program, ask them and see what they have to say, because obviously we care about it, and obviously we want you to be a part of it, and just kind of check in and see and hear their thoughts. We also have some student callers who reach out to folks who might be interested. And so if you're somebody who says, I want to talk to somebody individually, another thing, you can email us or you can ask your admissions counselor, and we'd be glad to get you connected to one of our students who have been setting aside some time to share about their experiences and to kind of share how you could be involved. So you can go to our website, hope.edu/Phelps. You can apply. And then part of the application process, I mentioned those questions. When you submit it, we try to get back to you within about 5 to 10 days. 5 to 7 days is our goal there. And then you, if you decide you want to be a part of Phelps Scholars, you sign our commitment form, and we get you going for all the classes and everything like that.
Well, thank you so much, Casey, for sharing some of that with us. It's been a pleasure having you and your students join us here tonight. So thank you. I hope you have a good rest of your evening and maybe get to have some dinner, a late dinner tonight. But again, thank you, Casey. For everyone else, before you log off, I hope what you're hearing is that this is a wonderful way for you to be involved on our campus. If you have any questions at all, please feel free, first and foremost, to reach out to your rep. We're happy to answer the questions that you might have. If we don't know the answers, we'd love to connect you to the people who do have the answers. Like Casey shared, he's willing to have some of those conversations. And we have student callers on the Phelps Scholars program that are willing to have some of those conversations with you. Please also feel free to connect with me at martinez@hope.edu. Again, that's martinez@hope.edu. And feel free to ask me some questions too, if that feels a little bit more comfortable. But in all, I hope that you guys enjoyed tonight's event. I hope that you are really interested in applying for the Phelps Scholars program. I hope to see you here on campus, and you belong here. Have a good night. Thank you.